All right, thank you, Ken, for the introduction. It's good to be back here in Lincoln again this year. I've been gone the last couple of years due to some conflicts that have occurred, but glad to be back again. And the program is a little bit different this year. It's a little shorter, so it's going to be a little bit over an hour. But I'm going to try to, and again, it's very basic spotter training stuff. If you want a little more in-depth stuff, there's some good training tools out there. A couple, some of you spotters know from Lancaster County, you have to take some online courses as well. Again, that's all very basic stuff. So anyway, I always like to start with a little intro video with music, and this year's no exception, so let's start off. Okay. Again, thanks for all coming today. I know you're busy. Some of you diehard Cornhusker fans are probably would have wanted to have been at the spring game, but thanks for coming to this. And thanks again for all the reports in the past that Lancaster County and your amateur radio emergency service has provided to us in the past. And again, this is a little bit over an hour presentation, so feel free to ask any questions at the end. And I brought with me, and make sure you do this, we're always looking for reports from spotters. Sometimes we get a thunderstorm that's not severe yet, or maybe it's a pop-up severe storm and you may not be out as an official spotter, but we want to know what's going on with it. So this form that you fill out has where you put your name, your address, your telephone for either mobile work and at home, and the hours for you are available for each of those. So fill that out. We have some of those up front. Just fill it out and leave it up front there for me. We put that into our database. Make sure when you put your address that it's not a P.O. box. It has to be a physical address because we actually have those locations on our maps and so forth so we can see where you're at in case we want to call you. And it will actually pop up your phone number as well. So we want to know things like what kind of hail or wind that might be taking place with the storm. So. All right, it's severe weather season, as we well know. It's that time of year. We're in April, and this is in the 38 county that we cover for our warnings. We get about 3 tornadoes every year in April. And when we get into May and June, those are our peak months, and we get about 5 or 6 tornadoes every year in those months. And that's on average, and that varies from year to year. Some years we have more in those months. We get into the doldrums of summer, and then the activity drops off. The storm tracks have moved northward into the Dakotas and into southern Canada. So we don't get too many tornadoes, and usually they're isolated events when we get into July or August. But we can get another resurgence in the fall when storms, tracks, and systems start moving closer to us again, and even in September or October. Time of day, late in the afternoon, early evening, when you have the peak heating of the earth from the sun. This is where the atmosphere becomes the most unstable, and because of all the moisture and heat you have, so that's going to form thunderstorms. And since tornado is a thunderstorm phenomena, that's why we have our peak activity generally between 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 7 or 8 o'clock at night. It's rare for tornadoes to occur at 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning, but if the conditions are favorable, it can happen. Now, why do we need storm spotters? Well, we need them because you can't see what's happening down below cloud base. We generally use, and this is a rule of thumb, this isn't always the case, a 2 out of 3 rule when making warning decisions. First, the atmosphere has to be conducive to produce severe weather. Sometimes the atmosphere is more conducive to producing hailstorms. Sometimes it's more conducive to producing tornadoes, okay? And we know that, and so we take that in mind and what type of warning we're going to issue what's happening with the atmosphere. We also utilize radar quite a bit. Radar has been an invaluable remote sensing tool to us, but it can't see everything. It has its limitations. The further out you get from the radar, the less details you get from the storm, and also it gets higher up into the cloud. So we rely on ground truth. That's where you as a storm spotter come in to give us the information that we need. So if generally 2 out of 3 of these things are present and our confidence level is high, we will issue the warning. And again, the type of warning depends on what we know, okay, of what's going on. And radar samples the thunderstorm. It goes into the clouds, samples the thunderstorm, the precipitation, and the motions inside the storm. As you go further out from the radar, because the curvature of the earth, the higher up in the storm the beam goes. And the beam actually gets wider. And so it's sampling, averaging out things more. So you're not going to see the detail as if you were up closer to the radar. So that's where you come in as a storm spotter. You can see what's happening down below from the cloud base below. That's important for us. Never assume we already know what's going on. Never think that, oh, I shouldn't call the National Weather Service because they're busy, okay? Now, a lot of times during an active event, we will have somebody monitoring your amateur radio frequency. Now, sometimes we don't. It depends on the situation. Usually, if it's an active event, we do have people that come in and monitor the radios, and so we'll listen to you. But never assume we don't know. And nothing bugs a forecaster more than if they put out a warning and they hear crickets. Okay? Because they use your reports in warning decision making. So if they don't hear anything, they think, well, gee, what's going on with the storm? It's going through, you haven't heard anything, and the storm's going to be out of that area soon, and I'm going to have to issue another warning, but I don't know if it's producing any severe weather. So that's why it's so important, because it's important for us in warning decision making to know what's going on. All right, this is a very important diagram, and actually I usually have 2 of these, but I'm going to only show 1 today. But this, I'm going to get in front here. I'll make sure that I don't do what I just did. And that's bang into the screen. But this diagram is extremely important for you to know. It's in the spotter guides. You can get pictures like this and different variations of it on the web, too. It's the structure of a classic supercell thunderstorm. There's different types of thunderstorms out there. There's lines of storms. They produce wind, called squall line. There's what we call clusters of thunderstorms. But the supercell thunderstorm is the most intense thunderstorm. It's the one that produces the biggest hail, the most damaging winds, and most of your tornadoes, most of your big tornadoes especially, occur out of a supercell. Pilger, supercell storm. Cedar County last year, supercell thunderstorm. Greensburg, Kansas, supercell thunderstorm. Joplin, Missouri, supercell thunderstorm. The tornadoes in Illinois just the other day, supercell thunderstorm. Actually a classic supercell thunderstorm when you looked at the structure. Well, if you look at some of the video in there, you'll see some of the structure I've talked about for years and years of what to look at in those storms, in that storm event. So let's look at this storm. This is looking to the west. So we're looking out maybe towards Seward or maybe Beaver Crossing or something like that. We're looking to the west in this case. And so we have precipitation to your right. That's where the rain shaft is. That's associated with the downdraft. Oh, okay. You'd prefer me to do that. Okay. All right. I'll use the mouse. All right. Is that you have precipitation to your left, or to your right, I'm sorry, to your right. And that's where the downdraft is taking place in that storm. That's where the air is dragged down, cold air from the precipitation drags down to the ground. And then that air nears the ground, it fans out like the spokes of a bicycle wheel. And that's what we call the outflow, that gust of air that comes out. And at the leading edge of that outflow is what we call the gust front. And a lot of times you'll see a feature at the leading edge of that gust front called a shelf cloud. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. That's with the precipitation. The updraft region is on the left side of the storm. If you're facing the storm to the west or to the northwest. And so you have air going up. You have one main updraft. And that's what we call the mesocyclone. It's the rotating updraft part of the storm. Actually, the mesocyclone is not only the rotating updraft, but also another part called the rear flank downdraft associated with it, curls around the backside. But it's the updraft portion that you'll notice the most with that big billowing tower that stands out like a sore thumb. So that's the main updraft. Off to the left of that is what we call the flanking line. This area where I'm circling here. This is towering cumulus clouds that stair-step their way to the main storm tower right here. So that's where new development may feed into the storm. Okay. So notice the one thing, too, is underneath these building towers is that the cloud base is smooth, flat, and rain-free. So that's what we call the rain-free cloud base in the storm. Now, sandwiched between the rain shaft to the right and the rain-free cloud base to the left, you can have an isolated lowering of the cloud base, generally about a mile wide, which we call the wall cloud. The wall cloud is actually where the most intense updraft is taking place in the storm. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, right where this updraft, where the red arrow is showing going up, eventually that updraft reaches a point where it can't go any further, so it spreads out, air starts spreading out on top and creating an anvil. And that's because it's reaching a stable layer of the atmosphere aloft called the stratosphere. So the air fans out on top, creates what we call an anvil, which is an ice crystal cloud. And then sometimes in supercell thunderstorms, the updraft is so intense. You know, we're talking updrafts of going 70 miles an hour up and upward motion in the storm. And so that updraft will penetrate sometimes into the stratosphere and create what's called an overshooting top, which looks like a piece, like somebody took a lump of mashed potatoes and put it on top of that anvil, okay? So that indicates extreme updraft that's taking place in the storm. Now, unfortunately, you don't see that very often because the storm has to be probably 25 to 30 miles away for you to see that feature. So this storm, again, now is moving to left to right and a little bit towards you. Okay, that's the motion of this storm. Now, the best location for you to be will be on the south and southeast side of the storm if the storm is moving southwest to northeast. Now, this is a supercell thunderstorm on the left here. Actually, both of these are, but we're going to look at the left side first. This is what we call the radar reflectivity display on the storm. So we're looking at precipitation intensity. So where it's darker the red, the heavier the precipitation is. So where this big blob is, where I'm circling my cursor right here, that is where the main, what we call front flank downdraft takes place in the storm. And that downdraft comes down, fans out, like I said, and your gust front occurs right at the leading edge. And for our purposes here, let's say the gust front is where the yellow meets the green here. That makes it easy for you to visualize right there. Okay, so that's where the gust front would be. Okay, so the updraft occurs down here in the south and west part where the white circle is. The air comes in from the south and east, and warm air funnels into this area right here and spirals upward into the storm. So this causes the precipitation to wrap around the back side. Actually, the precipitation actually creates a downdraft as well called the rear flank downdraft, but you get this precipitation that curls around the back side right here and creates what we call a hook or hook echo on radar. And a tornado forms right at the tip of the hook, kind of like if you had a fisherman's hook, it'd be right at the tip of that, where that barb is on the fisherman's hook. And in this instance, where it's purple here in the middle is actually a debris signature, where the tornadoes picked up a lot of debris and created this high reflectivity area right here. So this storm is moving from southwest to northeast. And so let's overlay where the precipitation is here, where your rain, and it gets gradually heavier as you get closer and closer to that rotating updraft where the circle is. Actually, your biggest hail occurs just north of the rotating updraft region right here. This is where you get baseball hail, softball size hail. It's an area you don't want to venture into. It's an area where storm chasers call the bear's cage. You don't want to go in there, okay? Unless there's some of those chasers that like to do that, you know. And there's some that do. But you want to stay south and east of that area. Probably 2 miles or more away, south and east, as this storm is moving in northeast. Now, supercell thunderstorms don't always move southwest to northeast. It depends on what the upper level winds are. Winds maybe 15, 20,000 feet are. Generally, that's the direction those storms are going to move. So, if we have now, in this case in the lower right, a storm moving from northwest to southeast, where is the best place for a storm spotter to be? West, southwest, okay? Those that said west or southwest are probably right. You got, again, your hook is off to the left here, rain-free area to the left, precipitation to the right. That's the way you kind of would remember it. You have in a supercell storm, you want the precipitation to your right, rain-free cloud base to the left, and you want warm air blowing from your back into the storm, okay? If you're in an area where you got cold air coming out from the storm to you, you're positioned wrong, okay? Now, this is for a mobile spotter, okay? This is for somebody who is actually, and there's some mobile spotters that actually go out and actually will reposition themselves and radio back where things are. Now, I know in Lancaster County and in many counties, they have fixed spotter locations. In those situations, if you're in the wrong spot, you're just SOL. All right, safety is number one. And since I'm from the federal government, we come up with acronyms all the time, not to confuse people, but sometimes we do. But ACEs, remember ACEs. ACEs stands for Awareness, Communicate, Escape Routes, and Safe Zones or Shelters. So awareness, you want to have good situational awareness of what's happening with the storm. Okay, know where you're at in relation to the storm and what's going on, okay? Well, part of the way you can find out about that is have good communication. You want to communicate your whereabouts on a regular basis. And I'll tell you this, Lancaster County does a dynamite job of doing that with their radio traffic, okay? Of communicating where they know where people are, and they communicate regularly what the weather reports are going at those different locations. Escape routes. You want to make sure that you go have a place, and this is especially if you're a mobile spotter, make sure you don't have a spot that's on a dead-end road or a minimum maintenance road, okay? And you want to make sure that you have some place to bug out, storm shelter area. And Reynolds is, again, you've done a dynamite job with this, is that you have places that you can go sometimes where you've gotten permission to go to a place of safety in some locations that you have in Lancaster County. We want to know the 4 W's. Who you are, what you saw, where you saw it, when you saw it, okay? Who you saw, in this case, my name is Jane Doe, I'm a trained spotter. What you saw, there's a golf ball size hail and 2 large trees been uprooted. I'm 5 miles west of Oakland and the hail and strong winds began about 5 minutes ago and is still ongoing. Okay, so this is good if you have a wind or hail report. Now, if you wanted to tell us where you're located, if you have a tornado or funnel cloud or wall cloud report, you would want to tell me what? What else would you want to tell me? What direction it's going, how far away it is, okay? So you not only want to give us your location, and in Lancaster County you have an easy numbering system for your fixed locations, so we know where they're at. And then you can tell us how far away, and it's a WAG, of how far away that phenomena, like a tornado is, from you, and then where is it moving to, okay? That's what we also want to know from that. Now, most times people will report things a lot closer to them than they really are. That's just because of our eyes perceive things to be a lot closer than they really are. What you can do to help in that situation is before you go out to your spotter locations at the beginning of the year or whatever, go out to those locations and make a list for those locations of different objects you see in the distance, like antennas, cell towers, water towers, prominent buildings, like the Capitol or something like that, that you can, and then find out how far away those are from that spotter location to use as a reference point. And so then you have this list of reference points where you know how far away that object is from you. And if you see a tornado, let's say in the foreground, in front of a certain tower, and you know that tower is about 2 miles away, you can give a pretty good judge of how far away that tornado is from you. So that's just a suggestion that you might want to do before the spotter season. Hail. You want to report the largest hailstone that you see, compare it to a common object. Here's the list of common objects that I've shown for year after year. And we issue warnings for severe thunderstorm warnings when we get hail that's quarter size or larger. That's about the size, that's 1 inch in diameter. That doesn't mean you don't need to report these other things, penny and dime size hail, nickel hail. We still want to know about that as well. But severe is considered quarter size. Void the term marble, because there's different sizes of marbles. Speaking of hail, here's a video from the big storm on June 3rd. I think I would have said something else, but this is a family show and I can't say those words. Okay, so anyway, you can see what happened. Anytime the hail gets, bigger than golf ball size, it's going to go through windows, and that includes your windshield. It's best not to start driving in those cases either, because you're increasing your impact velocity by doing that. Okay. So just remember that hail bigger than golf ball size can go through a windshield. All right, straight line winds or downburst winds are fairly common in storms, and we get damage from it. Most of the time, the damage from downburst type winds, and this is associated with the rain in the downdraft part, intense downdraft, is roughly 60 to 80 miles an hour. So you're going to get trees down. You might get some signboards that get blown down, maybe some minor roof damage with that. But we can get high-end downburst events that can have wind speeds up to 135 to 150 miles an hour. That's like EF1 to EF2, almost EF3 damage. And for example, here's me with my little damage tool, and I'm looking at this power pole that's down. This is a high tension power pole in Iowa. It was 4.5 mile stretch of power poles that were folded over like that. Not from tornado, but from damaging thunderstorm winds. So these can produce tornado-like damage. So let's look at some video from some intense winds. First one is in Texas, about 11 years ago, but it's still a good video. He wonders what happened.
Everybody okay?
Somebody get that guy a new pair of pants. It's short. Okay, so that shows you an example of what can happen in maybe a moderate type downburst case. But the other thing that you have to be wary about since you're out in the field is what your visibility happens to your visibility. And this intense thunderstorm on June 3rd last year out in central Nebraska in Custer County that moved southeast was two storm systems. One that went from central Nebraska, moved southeast, and another one started near Norfolk and moved southeast. And so this one had intense winds, and the video will show what happens to your visibility.
I like it with the train and everything.
Yeah.
That's a shelf cloud, by the way.
Wow, look at this.
Oh my god! Holy sh! It's scary.
Yeah, we're hitting that.
Yes, it is. Wow. That is so awesome.
You can tell that was from a storm chaser, right? So anyway, your visibility goes down to zero in just a matter of seconds. So you have to be wary of that, especially hopefully you're not driving out to your location when that storm is coming through, but that's thing to worry about when you get high winds. What to report, and Reynolds will have more of what you should report, but this is kind of what we want to hear from the Weather Service. Any measured wind speeds over 50 miles an hour, any broken branches or trees, any structural damage we want to know about, and impacts like trees blocking roads, power outages, injuries. I usually wait till talking to the emergency manager when they want to release that sort of information or give us that information, because sometimes that is kind of sensitive information. I always think straight line winds first because people tend to think that it had to be a tornado, okay? It had to be a tornado because the roof blew off my garage. It had to be a tornado because there was a roar. Anytime there's a roar with wind and wind gets high, there's going to be a roar to it. Or that my tree was twisted in the backyard. It twisted. And you ever watch those logging shows on TV, on like Discovery Channel or on History Channel? You know, does a tree ever fall the way they want it to all the time? No. Okay, sometimes it depends on the foliage that's on it and the way the wind hits it. It can twist off a lot of times. So it doesn't always have to be a tornado, but it's kind of interesting if you call something a downburst that isn't, I guess it isn't sexy enough for people, or it's a badge of honor that they want to say they got hit by a tornado. And it makes no difference insurance-wise, by the way, because insurance covers all wind peril usually and doesn't differentiate tornado and damaging wind. All right, now that's with the front of the storm, the downdraft. Let's look at wall clouds. This is underneath the rain-free cloud base. And this picture is a good example of a wall cloud. Again, about a little over a mile wide, maybe this is. This stands out like a sore thumb underneath the rain-free cloud base. And for a true wall cloud, it has to be there a while. There has to be persistence. It has to be there 10, maybe 15 minutes. You'll see rotation in it. You will see debris or scud clouds that we call ragged clouds that will be lifted upward into the updraft in that wall cloud. Sometimes, especially in the early season here in April when fields are being worked, you'll see dust and dirt being pulled up into the wall cloud, into the updraft part of that storm. So look for rotation. And then ask yourself, should I be seeing a wall cloud where I'm at? There's ways you can tell that. You know, if you talk to people like when you call your net control or whatever, they're looking at radar, they can tell you if you're in the right spot to see a wall cloud. Or if you have a radar app on your phone or pad or looking at radar on your laptop, you can tell where you're at in relation to the storm if you have GPS with it. So that's a question to answer is, should I be seeing a wall cloud? So let's look at a wall cloud. The first one's going to be one in Minnesota.
Cool. I've never seen anything like it. It is starting. Oh my God, that is the beginning.
And if you look especially at the top part of the cloud, you can visibly see the rotation here. Video sometimes doesn't do rotation justice.
That is
sometimes.
total awesomeness.
And it's going upwards.
You see it more evident
Look at that.
live in the field
Look at it's
than you
almost
do on
falling
video.
down that little part.
It's trying, it's twisting really good.
Mom, you should call the
This is really cool.
Yeah, this is what we call the collar
They see it.
or
Don't
striations,
miss out.
banding.
So cool. That is the beginning of
Look
the
at
tornado
that. It's
starting.
going like this, going down.
That's indicative of
It's
rotation.
It's twisting really good and it's going upwards. Look at that.
Oh, look, it's like a big giant mushroom, except it's in and oh my God.
See how I told you?
Okay. All right, let's look at a closer view of a rotating wall cloud, and you'll see the scud rotating around this storm.
Down.
You'll also see, if you look closely, you'll see some cloud fragments lifting
One of the
up
dirt road
to
that
the
it really started.
updraft.
That's the first dust cloud I saw from it.
Yep.
When I got out of there, there was a bunch of people chasing me. Like going in every direction.
All right, funnel clouds or funnel aloft. It has to be rotating. Just because something's hanging out underneath the cloud base of a storm doesn't mean it's a funnel cloud. Usually the funnel cloud will be kind of laminar looking, smooth looking like this, and it'll be rotating like a spinning ice skater. And it's not touching the ground. Now, if I have debris on the ground right under here, and that's something for you as a storm spotter should be looking at, what is it then? Then it's a tornado. Even if it's invisible between the tip of the tornado to the ground where the debris is, it's still a tornado. Eventually that debris in the ground will lift upward into the cloud funnel here. So let's look at a funnel cloud. This is out in western Nebraska, and you're driving under it. I don't recommend that you do this, by the way.
It is.
Look at it. It's a big spiral.
I'm recording it. It's spinning pretty fast.
It is. Crazy.
Okay. So don't do that, okay? And don't shoot video that close, but if you do, send it to me, okay? All right. Tornado, violently rotating column of air in contact with the ground attached to a thunderstorm cloud base. You'll see debris visible. You'll see rotation definitely visible. And in fact, this picture is two tornadoes. The tornado in the foreground is, the thin one, is the end of the Pilger tornado. It's dying out. In the background is the Wakefield tornado. The tornado went straight north and east of Wakefield. So the tornado has a life cycle to it. You have the developing stage with the dust and debris on the ground, then you go into the mature stage where the tornado is the most violent, usually in that stage, and then you have the dissipating stage where a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times the tornado will rope out and die out. So let's look at a life cycle of a tornado last year in Hardington, south of Hardington. This is tornadoes that occurred, one of the 6 tornadoes that occurred in Cedar County. You'll see the complete, you'll see the complete life cycle.
Look at it! Yeah! There it is!
Oh my God, look at it! Look at it! Wow!
Wow! Look at it on the ground! Wow! We should have gotten aggressive with this thing. Get ready.
Look at roads.
Hurry up. That dude, that's coming down right there. We're going to get on that southeast option. It doesn't go that far east, does it? Oh, yeah. Wow. It might be. Here comes the next one.
Now, even though the tornado's dissipating, it's still destructive, still dangerous. The other thing to be aware of is, like in the day of Pilger, and also on this day in June 17th, following day, the supercell thunderstorm cycles tornadoes. You get more than one tornado. The tornado will a lot of times die out, go through the life cycle, die out, new mesocyclone area forms in the storm, and another tornado forms off to one side. So you have to be wary of that. So for you as a storm spotter, and you're watching a roped out tornado, look around you, look above you, hopefully not above you, that in case a new rotation, new tornado starts developing. All right, let's look at the Pilger tornadoes. First, we're going to look at the Pilger East tornado. The tornado went east of Pilger. This video was shot from a person who was delivering cattle from Minnesota to a feedlot about 6.5 miles north of Wisner. And just so happens he came there and tornado occurred. So he's looking at this tornado to the west and southwest. It's moving south to north. He's shooting it with high def video in his cell phone, 1080p video with his cell phone. So let's look at this. And in the background, you'll see the tornado that went through Pilger coming northeast. So here's the track of the tornado, south to north. Here's where he is, over here in the feedlot. It's right here. So he's looking to the southwest and west. That's his camera view. And at one point, he's only 1 mile from the tornado. Pretty spectacular video from that. All right, and then this is a video, I showed it in the last session, but if you weren't there, you get to see it. If you were there, you get to see it again. So this is from Scott Peak, who's a storm chaser traveling east at 275. You see the tornado goes through Pilgrim.
Oh, dear God. It's ripping up a whole town. All right, gotta go.
Well, like I said, most times people drive away from these things. And he does stop. Tornado crosses 275 here. A lot of violent motion going in that storm right now.
Oh, look at the little vortices dancing in there. That's crazy.
And like what I said before, this is even more crazy.
Oh,
Where this white car.
There's the other tornado. Oh, gosh.
You see the power flashes there. And Scott told me that it was not a storm chaser. That was just somebody with Nebraska plates that was in a hurry to get through. He made it through, but I wouldn't do that. All right, a little bit about the EF scale. How we rate tornadoes. Rate them on a damage scale. Goes from EF 0 to EF 5. And so we have what we call a damage assessment toolkit that we take out there on either a laptop or a iPad or whatever, with different structures and different degrees of damage that take place at different wind speeds. So we rate the tornado based on that, and it's subjective depending on how well constructed the structure is as well. So as a frame of reference, we have a well-built frame home here, and so what I mean by well-built, it's something that's bolted to the foundation, the sill plate's bolted down, the studs are toe-nailed in. Some of the newer construction now you see straight nailed in from the underneath, so it's a little different construction, but it's one that's held down well. So EF 0, you get some shingles off your house. Go to EF 1 with wind speeds up to 110 miles an hour. More of the roofing material comes off, even parts of your roof may come off. Your windows get broken out. Any awnings you have or porch awnings will come down, and your garage door starts bowing out. You go to EF2, your whole roof is gone. You go to EF3, your interior parts of your room, like your bathrooms and closets, are still standing. And then EF4, those go down. The debris is confined mainly to around the structure. And then EF5, the foundation is swept clean off and the debris is blown way downstream. The only thing that you might see left in the structure would be either a bathtub that's bolted down or a toilet, okay, that's bolted down. So maybe somebody should invent seat belts for toilets or something like that. All right, what to report for tornadoes. Again, this may differ a little bit from what Reynolds has, so follow what he has. This is what we want from the Weather Service. One of the location of the feature, the direction that the tornado is moving, any damage. Again, injuries against are a sensitive issue. We'll wait until we get that from the official sources. And report that again as soon as safely as possible. Again, your reports are used for decision warning services. So they're important to us. If you don't have if we don't hear a warning or don't hear a report, we might assume that maybe nothing's happening with that storm. All right, other things that are dangerous for you as out there as a storm spotter is flooding, heavy rain. These storms produce tremendous amount of rain at times. Want to know any rainfall rates of 1 inch or more, or rainfall totals of 2 inches. Any significant flooding, not just poor drainage along the highway. We want to know if there's water over the roads, if there's cars inundated, like an underpass that's got cars stranded due to flooding, any road closures due to it. Respect the power of water. It only takes 2 feet, actually 18 inches to 24 inches of water to make your vehicle float. It only takes 6 inches of moving water to sweep you off your feet. So respect the power of water. Last year, 2014, from flood fatalities, 66% of them were from people that drove into flooded areas. So even though it may look like, well, maybe I can drive through that, it's probably not a good idea, okay? Because you might get stuck and you might start floating down the creek. An example of this is what happened to a storm chaser, Chris Novi. Chris actually was here a couple years giving safety talks on severe weather, okay? And he preaches safety. He got into trouble. This was on the same day as the El Reno tornado that killed 3 storm chasers a couple years ago. He actually was driving along the highway, and it was a flooded area. He decided not to go any further, and he thought he would do like he had done many times before, is either pull into a parking lot or pull into what he thought was a road access and then do a 3-point turnaround and go the other way. Well, water was covering the area where he turned into, and it turned out to be that there was a culvert right there. And so this is what happened to him. Luckily, the glass broke in his vehicle and he was able to get out. All right, to reiterate, what to report. Hail, compared to common object, any wind speeds over 50 miles an hour, any wall clouds, if it's rotating, tornadoes and funnel clouds, any wind or tornado damage or flooding, and don't forget the 4 W's, who, what, where, and when. There are lookalikes out there. Things that look like they're dangerous but really aren't. The first one in the upper right is what we call virga, or evaporating rain. It is harmless. It's just rain that evaporates, looks like a funnel shape. You don't see any rotation, you don't see any debris with it. The next one is mammatus clouds. And that's in the lower left here. Mammatus are pouches that form underneath the anvil of the thunderstorm. They look picturesque, especially at sunset, but they're not dangerous. And the third one, which is where we get most of the false funnel reports, is from scud. You see scud clouds near the wall cloud going into these ragged clouds that go into the wall cloud, but also at the leading edge of the storm, where we have what we call the shelf cloud, which is what I'm going to cover next. you'll see sometimes scud hanging down. And this is where the general public will start calling 911 and saying, I see a funnel cloud or a possible tornado. And really it was a harmless feature. So that's what scud is. So there's your virga and your mammatus, and then also your scud. All right, shelf cloud. This is a good picture of one. This is in Crawfordsville, Iowa, by Nick Nolte. I don't think that's the actor, okay? But this is a picture of a shelf cloud. It's kind of a wedge-shaped cloud. It extends from generally one end of the horizon to another. At the leading edge of this is the leading edge of what we call the gust front, within the outflow, the downdraft of the thunderstorm. So you're going to get a pickup of wind. Not always is it damaging winds. Most of the time it isn't. Most of the time it might be 40, 50 miles an hour. Okay. But sometimes it can be damaging and destructive winds with it. So you want to look at the horizon, what's happening down at the bottom here with trees and power poles, power lines, what's happening with them as that cloud feature moves. And that cloud feature will push out towards you with time. So let's look at a video of a shelf cloud, and this is in Missouri Valley on the same day as the hailstorm that hit Blair. And then this is about the same time that the Blair was getting nailed.
Yeah.
Because it's not
You have a
hidden.
vibe.
Here's your shelf cloud,
It's that part we
extending
couldn't see.
from here all the way
Rain
over
behind
to
it.
here.
It really is.
It's a bird trying to fly into the wind.
I want to go. Okay. All right, bye. No, he just put the keys where we can find them.
I need to know.
Dang, I just got nailed in the eye with a drop of water. Please tell me that was just a big water
No,
droplet.
I think that was you.
That was a bit.
That's a bird
I
poop
can
right there.
see exactly where it hit too. Thing is, that's green up in there.
Okay, so that's shelf cloud. How to send reports. Of course, goes to net control. We hear that information come to us. If you're a storm spotter, you can give us a call at 1-800-452-9074. I have some sheets here that are kind of a guide for wind and also has our phone number on it and has hail sizes on it as well. Take one of those sheets too. We also have an online form that you can go on our website, and we have our new website, but it'll say send a storm report. That is kind of a click and fill real quickly kind of a report that gets sent to us. It gets alarmed at a forecaster's workstation, and then we get that. eSpotter, for those that signed up for eSpotter, eSpotter is no longer supported and is gone totally. Okay, so this replaces that. We also post things, you can post things on, you can tweet reports to us if you're in the social media or on Facebook, because we have somebody dedicated now looking at social media in our office. If you were interested in more about observing, like precipitation, there's a site called CocoRoss. And CocoRoss, you can get a rain gauge and start taking precipitation readings every day and send it via the internet in. I do that, and other people have done that. There's also a mobile app to report hail, which is called MPing. This is provided by the National Severe Storms Laboratory in Norman, Oklahoma. We see those reports too, so you can go there. It'll have the hail sizes. Just click, and it has your location, and that gets sent to us. All right, examples of good reports. Here's some examples, and they're hard to read in the back, I know. But first one is from Officer Jill Smith. Whoops. Well, we go back. Baseball-sized hail fell in Gretna at 6:57 p.m. The hail lasted 5 minutes and broke windows, stripped trees, and damaged cars. It has the 4 W's in it. Everything that we need to know is in that. The next one. My name is John Smith. No relation to Jill, I don't think. I'm a trained spotter. The tornado moved through my place, which is 5 miles west of Trainer on Highway 92. The tornado hit about 7:45 p.m. and lasted only a few seconds. It moved northeast. Fortunately, damage was limited to a couple of outbuildings and a windbreak, and no one was injured. Again, very concise, detailed information in there. We don't want somebody to be talking all about their whole life story on the telephone. We want them to just give us these reports quickly into our office. Recapping one more time. Hail compared to common objects. Wind speeds over 50. Wall clouds as it rotating. Tornadoes and funnel clouds. Wind speed or wind or tornado damage. And flooding. And don't forget the 4 W's: who, what, where, and when. There are different ways to get severe weather forecasts. One of them is through going to websites. There's a myriad of websites, a lot of good ones out there that the private companies have. Weather.com's a weather channel. You know, there's AccuWeather has a good site. We at the Weather Service have www.weather.gov/Omaha. We issue a hazardous weather outlook several times during the day, during the severe weather season. It will tell you if there's a chance of any sort of hazardous weather, and it will also tell you whether there is a possibility of storm spotters being needed over the next 24 hours. You can also get weather information at the Storm Prediction Center site, which would be your outlooks and your watches, and that would be at www.spc.noaa.gov. You can go to Facebook and Twitter, which will have information. Of course, NOAA Weather Radio is important. And then the latest thing to come out is what's called wireless emergency alerts. And I talked about that a little bit in the last talk. These are alerts on your cell phone, okay? And you have to activate it by just turning on the toggle switch on it. You'll get your tornado warnings and flash flood warnings. Severe thunderstorm warnings are not on wireless emergency alerts, but it will alarm you. All it will say, and there's 91 character limit, so it has tornado warning, this area till 10:45, take shelter now. Check local media. That's all it will say. So these have been very successful in helping alert people. Remember that the cell phone now is kind of a personal device. It has my music on it, okay? It's my music. Well, maybe not, but it's my music. It has my personal information in it. It has emails from people. But now I'm getting an alert to me, directly to me on this. So that's why people are taking these warnings seriously using that. There are some limitations. It's one, the WE alerts aren't number one, I should say, the WE alerts, or the wireless emergency alerts, are not affected by normal cell phone traffic. A lot of times during a disaster, cell phone traffic goes to a standstill. This is on a separate channel on the cell tower, and it comes to you. If the cell tower goes down, you may not get your alert. Or if you're in bad coverage area, you may not get your alert. So be aware of that. There are also some other great apps out there. Red Cross has a great warning app too, and so do other people have great alerting apps as well. All right, changes to the Storm Prediction Center outlooks. The old way was just slight risk, moderate risk, high risk. Now they've changed it, added what's called a marginal risk, which is below a slight, and those are for real low-end severe weather cases, very, you know, it's kind of conditional type severe. It may happen, but it may not. You have your slight risk. Now we have enhanced between moderate and slight. So enhanced is an elevated risk. The risk the other day in Illinois was an enhanced risk, where the tornado occurred in Illinois. And so then we have moderate, still, and high. So that's something that's out there now. All right, finally, again, never assume we already know what's going on. Okay? Never be afraid to call us, the Weather Service. You're the emergency manager. They're usually never afraid to call us to find out what's going on. Even though we might be busy, it doesn't matter. We want to know those reports because your reports help save lives. And that's what's important to both you and to me. And thank you very much. And I'll take any questions if there's any questions.
When you were talking about the Pilger tornado, you said there was a tornado path and a vortex path. What's the vortex path?
Well, vortex, it's the same thing. Vortex is the same as the tornado. There's sometimes, though, that tornadoes, like big tornadoes, like in Pilger, what I was probably referring to in the last talk was that sometimes you get suction vortices, which mean that you get smaller tornado circulations around the common center of the main tornado funnel. And you get your very intense damage right in the path of those suction vortices. And so you see those at times in the big tornadoes.
More questions?
In the wires alerting system for your cell phone,
Yes.
does that go by your cell phone number or your location? Let's say I'm driving through Kansas and Oklahoma. Would I get that notification?
It goes by your location.
Okay.
Where you are, because you have GPS enabled in your phone, it knows if you're in a warning polygon. And depending on the cell phone company you have, most of them use, if there's a cell tower within that polygon, it'll alert you. Now, one company, I won't say which, but one company will alert for not only within the polygon, if their cell tower is within the polygon, but if they have a tower outside the polygon, which has coverage in that polygon, it will alert you as well.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what are the requirements to become a state certified spotter, like specifically?
Well, that requirement is that you have to, number one, you have to be involved as a volunteer somehow with emergency management. And each county does it differently. So in this county, Reynolds can tell me if I'm wrong, you have to be involved with Lancaster County Emergency Management Agency as a storm spotter. So you would have to take 2 online courses, pass those courses. You have to then attend a spotter class, and then there's a quiz that you take that covers the material over all that. Not just this class, but the whole thing. And then you would be credentialed. I'd hate to use the word certified. You'd be a credentialed. The state will give you get a card from the state that you are a credentialed storm spotter. Now, some counties do it differently, and some counties don't do credentialing, but it is part of a state law that has that if you want to be credentialed storm spotter.
There's another requirement in Lancaster County. You must have a ham license, amateur radio license, because that's how we communicate. So.
And getting a ham license is not that difficult, okay? You don't have to take the code test anymore, for continuous wave or wireless or code test.
Morse code.
So so it's easy to get a technician license. There's classes that are held all the time from different clubs, and then they do testing, okay? And And once you pass, you'll get your FCC license. So. The storm spotter classes are through the National Weather Service, but the actual, for the ham radio license, that's done, they're actually done by the ham radio clubs. They have people that are qualified as instructors to do that, and there's people that are qualified to be, to take exams for you, or give exams.
Yeah, there will be classes starting, I believe, on Tuesday, right? On the 14th at Union College. Please contact us at the front. They go for 6 weeks, and they go from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. In the evenings at Union College. And those classes are free. There's no charge for them. It does cost $15 to take the FCC exam. Your license is from the Federal Communications Commission once you have it. People that stick with the course, we have about 100% graduation rate if you stick with the course. So it isn't hard. You don't have to know Morse code. You don't have to know a lot of math to get your technician license. If you're interested, please come down and see us at the front here, and we'll get you signed up for the class. Again, they are free. Any more questions?
And your license is good for 10 years, okay, before you have to renew it. And
what's that?
And technician license, you'll get to use some of the frequencies, but if you want to become here, talk to the world, I'd encourage you to get your general license or above.
What's your call sign, Brian?
KB0QXF.
What's your call sign?
WD0BIV since I was in high school.
W0BCL here. A lot of the people in the room are storm spotters and are licensed hams. It is not that difficult. Most people freak out when they say radio and ham license. If you want to help storm spot, you have to have a ham license in Lancaster County because that's our communication. And one thing about ham radio, it's always there. Everything else goes down. Communication-wise, we're still able to communicate. So again, we have classes available and they're open for everyone that is interested in that. The classes are free. We don't charge a cent for you taking the classes. So, okay, we have any other questions for Brian here?
All right,
Okay,
thank you very much.